$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. This is Super NES podcast episode 152. That's 152 this time around. Don't ask me why I felt like saying that twice. I just did. This is Greg, joined by Joe as always.
Hi.
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? I hope your holidays were all very good. Ours was pleasant. Everybody's safe, and that's the best we can ask for right now. So,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Fingers crossed. 2021 is going to be better. We're 2021 now.
Yes, exactly. Well, it definitely will be. I mean, in a year, things will be back to normal. I mean, there's this lady in title is just going to be. There's several more painful, difficult months coming up to get to there. But anyway, we're here to help take your mind off things for a short time. By looking at a game that is actually somewhat relevant to current events. In some a weird, interesting way, which we'll get into, I'm sure. So, anyway, I was inspired to. So, like I said, we were looking at Waterworld for Super NES. Obviously Super NES, but I say that because, I say that because most people don't know the game came out on Super NES. That's because this is another one of those European only games. Mm-hmm. So, so I was inspired to. I was inspired to look at this game because I never had seen the movie that this game was based off of. I knew the story behind it, I knew the tales behind it. I know what a massive train wreck it was in production and how it bombed the box office and whatnot. So I always just stayed away from it. Recently, a friend of mine told me the movie's actually pretty good if you look at it divorced from all that and just take the movie for what it is. So I tracked it down. The movie's available currently for streaming on both Showtime and DirecTV if you have either of those services. Or if you don't, it's also a pretty easy movie to get from numerous places like Amazon, YouTube, Redbox, etc. for $4 to $5 for rent or buying it. So, so it's not so even if you don't have one of the services available for streaming, it's not it's not a pricey movie to watch. And so I watched it for the first time about a month ago. It's not bad. It's actually a pretty decent movie, I thought. The movie came with so much luggage attached to it that I think it was kind of doomed from the start because, everybody probably knows the story behind it. The movie ran way over budget. There was constant battles between the main star Kevin Costner and the director to the point the director quit the movie. So the movie did not do very well in the box office. But yeah, if you watch the movie now, 25 years later, and just kind of boy, that makes me feel old saying that, but it has been 25 years, so the special effects are kind of a little bit dated by today's standards, but they still look very good. For what the movie is, the movie's not bad. It's a decent action movie, with good special effects, decent acting. The plot's kind of garbage, but it's one of those kind of movies just shut your mind off for a while and just watch, and it's fun for what it is. So if you've been like me, and just avoided the movie for years because of its reputation, give it a watch. Maybe pleasantly surprised. So, I also mention that because the fact that unlike some movies and TV shows, Home Improvement, anybody, Waterworld's premise is actually fine for is actually fine for like an action video game because like there's enough action going on in the movie that's like okay, you can see a translation of this video game format being done like fairly easily. So I mean, so it like there's not. So it's not like a it's not like anybody had to like stretch their imagination to figure out how to make this like work for a game. So they anticipated the movie being a huge success, of course. So like some other like movie rights, there was a bidding war for the rights to make games based off the movie. Ocean Software ended up getting the rights to produce all the handheld and console versions of the game. Whereas Interplay got the rights to be able to do the PC version of the PC game. So, Ocean announced the game for numerous platforms. It was originally announced for. This is actually a pretty long list. The game was initially announced for Super NES, Virtual Boy, Game Boy, Genesis, Sega Saturn, Atari Jaguar, 3DO, and PlayStation. All had all of the game announced for it back in 1995.
And only 2 of those versions came out, right?
Technically 3, but we'll get to that. So
okay.
So the game itself, it kind of be divided into like 3 different kinds of games, kind of like saying because it's like how the similarities of a game between like various platforms, especially like during during this time period. So, the Super NES, Genesis versions, and the Game Boy version were all planned to be like very similar. Combination of overhead perspective, like along with like side-scrolling perspective. The CD versions of the game for Saturn, Jaguar, 3DO, and PlayStation were all planned to be a 3D virtual ocean gameplay mechanic. So they also plan to incorporate clips from the movies. Clips from the movie because it's CD based. So
right.
And the Virtual Boy version of the game is again like very different. Because that game was using more of the not first person, but more like behind the camera at a closer range to kind of like almost kind of give you a first person perspective. I mean it is first person perspective because you're using the Virtual Boy, of course, but you know what I mean. So when the game did not turn out, so when the movie did not turn out to be a huge success, most of those games got canceled. So the Virtual Boy version is the one that got the biggest release, because that game came out, like in North America only, and that game is widely regarded as being like the worst game in the library, like in the system. So, I've not played it myself, but having looked at it on YouTube, I can see why. But yeah, so out of the, so the 22 games that actually came out with like Virtual Boy, Waterworld is considered to be the worst game on the system. So, but that's the one that got the most widest release. The Super NES version, as mentioned before, only got released in Europe. The Genesis version was finished, and that also was planned for European release only as well. But that plan eventually fell through, and the game never came out in Europe. However, in recent years, a complete version of the game has been leaked onto the internet by somebody. So it is possible to play the Genesis version of this game, like on there. Anyway, I looked at that game on YouTube. That game really is very, very close to Super NES version, just the version as most Super NES and Genesis versions of the game were during this time period. Just at the required differences in like graphics and sound effects and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, they had more cat meows.
So the Game Boy version also came out in Europe only, as a matter of fact, and that one's also based off the Super NES and Genesis version. Even though different company did the Game Boy version, that game still looks like very close to Genesis and Super NES big brother cousins. So the Super NES version of the game was done by DMA Design, who you now know better on as Rockstar. So But yeah, so we've already covered both DMA design and Ocean in past podcasts. We won't go into them like too much. But I will talk about the PC version of the game real quick because the PC version of the game is interesting. This did come out worldwide, in both DOS and Windows by Interplay. That game's like more of a FPS game. Whereas you're doing
okay.
So you're doing various so real-time strategy. So you're doing missions, playing as a war chief with a task force of people, depending on the mission, and you're trying to gather enough food, resources, weapons, etc., to be able to evade the enemies and complete your mission. That game actually looks that game actually looks the most decent. However, it did not. Like all the other versions of the game, did not review very well. For example, GameSpot gave the PC version 4.5 stars out of 10. So, yeah. So anyway, even though Waterworld for Super NES only came out in Europe, it was planned for a North American release. In December 1995. As a matter of fact, Nintendo Power gave the game a pretty lengthy write-up and a review like that month's issue. But in the end, they changed their mind and the game never came out in North America. I looked online. I cannot find. I can't talk today. Unlike the leaked Genesis Power version, I could not find a leaked Super NES NTSC version of the game. So, maybe one exists. Maybe it's but I'm not very sure. So, you can convert the game from PAL to NTSC pretty easily, especially nowadays.
Right.
The tools we have available on hand. But PAL games play a bit slower. And there are other to us at least drawbacks. I'm sure Europeans don't see them that way, but yeah. So so the cancellation must have been done late. If the game did get a review, review Nintendo Power. So but anyway, so because of that, this game's somewhat uncommon, fairly rare, which we'll get into later on in the end when we talk about pricing. So, but anyway, Joe, you've not seen the movie, correct?
I have not seen the movie.
Okay, and you not played any version of this game until this podcast, right?
I have not played this specific version. I did play the Virtual Boy version.
Oh, okay.
Actually, believe it or not, this was actually my first experience with the Virtual Boy. I had a friend in school that actually had bought a Virtual Boy, and this was the only game he had for it. So we got to play lots of Waterworld for the Virtual Boy because, oh my god, we were playing the future of gaming in red and black. And for what it is, it's not a horrible game. It's just repetitive.
Yeah.
And, to be fair, we'll get more into it, but, it being an Ocean game, this is on par with what Ocean produces.
True. Yes. Yeah.
So it did not surprise. Obviously at that time, it surprised me, but, now with, 2020 retrospect, I can look at it and be like, yeah, that's Ocean, duh. But yeah, so that was my experience, and that's why, when you were talking about the different versions, the only one I knew was the Virtual Boy, the one for the Super Nintendo that we did here, and then the unreleased Genesis version. I didn't even know that they had a Game Boy version.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Well, again, the Game Boy version only came out in Europe, so
right.
But yes, like I said, most versions of this game either got canceled, or it had a very limited release because the movie ended up being a flop. So,
right.
So a different company actually did the Virtual Boy version of the game. So not DMA design, but yeah, the Super NES game.
Okay.
But the Super NES game, you can tell definitely has British origins because it's DMA design / Rockstar is obviously British. Ocean's British, so yeah, this has a very British feel to it. So yeah, so yeah, like you said, ocean games, like you know what you're getting into, like when you play one of them. Not that they're always bad games, but you know what to expect. So,
Right.
And this game is pretty typical like that. So, the game itself, I mentioned before, this is a combination of overhead perspective plus also side view perspective, depending upon the run stage that you are. So, the first half stage has like going around like in your ship, which is a trimaran, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is actually like which is from the movie, but but it's also like but you're also, but yeah, like it's like a real ship. So as you're playing as the Mariner, who's the main character, Kevin Costner's character, like in the movie. So from the overhead perspective, you're moving around, shooting enemies on personal watercrafts. That we call it smokers, like with the smokers who like the main bad guys, like about the movie and the game. So so like every now and then you also so your goal there is to try to prevent them from grabbing Aetors, inhabitants, like the local inhabitants, place them around, and you have to shoot them, and just shoot them, and also just go around and get your objectives. Every now and then, however, you also do a dive because the Mariner has the ability to be able to breathe underwater. This is a mutation that's explained in the movie.
Right.
So you dive down into these sunken cities or sunken bases or buildings and whatnot, trying to avoid enemies, gather resources, that kind of stuff. It's pretty typical platforming stuff. So, the game is 8 stages. You can buy weapons every now and then, like my shopkeeper, toward the end of the stage. There's there's the Colt, which is a basic gun, a Gatling gun, which is like a better gun, harpoons. You also can make repairs to your ship, as well. So there's 8 stages altogether in the game, with a boss fight at the end. The game does have a password feature, so that's nice. The plot of the game loosely follows out of the movie. I mean, the game does explain in the beginning what's going on, what's going on, what the objective is. Like I said, the plot's basically taken in the movie. So the graphics, they do use cutscenes that are not photorealistic but photogenic. So they are scanned in from the movie basically. So at the time, they do look pretty good. So but they I
was impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean the graphics overall I think are one of the game's strong points. The graphics of the game are very nice, I think. They are bright, colorful, pretty good detail in the buildings, some of the buildings and whatnot. Enemies look nice. So the game really does have the game really does do a good job of kind of simulating a water environment, I thought. So
absolutely.
But anyway, graphics and gameplay. What do you think overall about the graphics and gameplay, Joe?
I thought this game actually looked pretty good. As far as gameplay goes, so when you're in your little ship, it felt almost like, and I'm sure someone will ridicule me for this and whatever, but it felt like asteroids. Like your central little ship, and yes, you have quite a bit of the world that you can traverse and whatnot, but I mean, essentially you're kind of going around and you can basically drive around in circles and just keep firing to be able to get rid of, the enemies and whatnot. That's how I felt was very much like asteroids. Which isn't a bad thing. I love asteroids. Just wasn't expecting the gameplay to be like that. So that was kind of fun. I did feel like the game was designed specifically so that no matter how well you do, you're going to have some of the enemies show up in the little base. Because technically, I mean, if you don't get any enemies in the base, there's no reason to go in there and do the side-scrolling platforming stuff.
Sure.
So I felt like it was programmed that no matter how good you were, even if you were able to kill every single one with your ship, you're still going to end up having some that you have to go through the side-scrolling bits and get through and get some people. And honestly, the side-scrolling bits was where my frustration with this game kind of began and ended. Don't get me wrong, like the game isn't bad. This is playable. I enjoyed what was there, but there's a lot of I wish there was more, and I wish it was better. So, like, the side-scrolling platform is okay, but, like, sometimes, like, I felt like your jump wasn't good enough. I felt some of the hitboxes were kind of hit or miss. It made the side-scrolling levels really complicated, and not complicated, but frustrating. And, I don't know. I enjoyed the watercraft parts a lot more than the side-scrolling.
Yeah,
So-
right. Yeah. So, yeah, I generally agree with you. I do understand where your frustration came from. I think, definitely, like, it's more mindless. The overhead part, because, like I said,
Yeah.
you're just like going around trying to find things and shooting, trying to find things, like shooting people. Whereas at least with the side-scrolling stages, you actually had an objective, like find these items.
Right.
But yeah, so it's like, and of course, it has to be included because the game's based on a movie where global melting has melted the ice caps, 99% of the world like below water. I mean, so it
Right.
has to be, so it has to be included for it to be based off the movie. So
Right.
I mean, so I understand why it's there. But yeah, the side-scrolling parts just were not as much fun. I don't think. It's like the graphics are good. The graphics here are gorgeous. So I
yeah.
definitely do like the enemies. The water effects, the water bubbles and whatnot. It's a nice touch. But yeah, so it's like first of all, it's like, but yeah, so like the sunken boats themselves like look good. There's some nice pseudo 3D effects. For example, some of the stages, like with the chains are in front of you,
Right.
like a whatnot. So, but it's like, first of all, I mean, like, of course you move slower. Of course you move slower, like in the water, but he moves like just way too slow.
Yeah.
Second of all, guns work underwater. Bring a gun with you, like just like, just like, yes, I don't. I don't get that. It's like, having to avoid enemies when you're usually shooting everything topside is frustrating. So
Yeah.
and you're right, the hitboxes do kind of seem like kind of wonky. So
Yeah.
it's definitely most of your frustration and challenge with this game will come to the side-scrolling stages, because I never died. I never died in the overhead part. It was always
Right,
just like
right.
the side-scrolling part where it's like I had my deaths at. So it's like, I mean, it's not long if you know what to do and where to go. It's not that bad, but it's like, and like overall, typical platformer, the game's not that long. I mean, the long plays on YouTube like about like an hour and a half. So it's like a typical platformer game. It's not that hard when you know what to do. But yeah, so it's like they did a great job of capturing the essence of the movie, I thought, because it's like, like I said before, the movie concept lends itself to a game just fine compared to like some other movies and TV shows they tried they try to shoehorn like into games. So
Right.
the concept was fine, the execution was fine. I just wish that the actual gameplay mechanics and level design had been like a bit better designed. And like, I think some of it is because like we touched upon before, this was a European created game, and Europeans enjoy different things out of the games than Americans do. So it's like, that's why I said this is a very European platformer, in the sense of how it plays and whatnot, which is, it's not a bad thing. It's just like, the perspective for that's very different for us, like for us here on the side of the ocean compared to like, compared to Europe. So, maybe it's for the best this game never got released in North America, because I really don't know like how well it would, how well would have done, given those design choices.
Yeah, not only the design choices, but it seems like, especially here in the States, like if a movie bombs, like people aren't going to go with the merchandising. So they could have made, 200,000 copies of this game, and whether they would have sold even 10,000 is questionable. Yep. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely cases with the game is. Don't get me wrong. There are definitely cases like where the game is considered to be much better than the movie is. For example,
right,
like Blade, for example. But
yeah.
But yeah, usually a movie. But yeah, movie does not do very well. It doesn't. It generally does not help the movie. The game's chances of being able to do like well in the marketplace. So, but like I said before, like the game itself is fine if you enjoy platformers. Definitely challenging in parts. It's definitely. I think it's fairly unique. I can't really think of too many games that have this kind of the gameplay mechanics in them. So
yeah.
Well, let me also go back and add something in. Not every side-scrolling section is done underwater. There are side-scrolling sections where you're like above water and you can shoot. So I'm like those areas are much those areas immediately is like are much better. Because they're going like shooting people like defending yourself. So just for that reason, I enjoy that part. I enjoy those stages better, obviously. So
yeah.
Music in the game is fine. I mean it's nothing great, but it's like decent music for what it is. So.
I was gonna say that to me, this game, the saving grace of this game is the music.
Oh, really?
I enjoyed the music. I won't say it's fantastic, but on par with the rest of the game. This is the part that stuck out to me the most was the music.
Sure. Yeah. So so how far how far did you get in the game?
Let's see. I did I want to say 4 levels in. I did 2 of the boat levels and 2 of the side-scrolling levels.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't do a lot, and I knew there was a password system, but again, there wasn't enough of this game to make me go, oh, I want to put the password in and see what the end is. I figured, okay, this is following kind of like the movie, and obviously I'm going to be fighting Dennis Hopper at the end, and I'm just, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah. I mean,
it is Dennis Hopper, right?
Yes. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Actually related to that, Dennis Hopper said in interviews he actually likes the movie quite a lot. He actually does think of the, he actually does think this is does think this one was one of his better roles. So,
I mean, to be fair, the clips I've seen, he plays a great villain.
Oh, he does.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's deceased now. Didn't he pass away a number of years ago?
I want to say he passed away. Yeah. I'm actually looking at it now. I can't even believe it's been 10 years. Yeah.
Has it been that long? Wow. Okay.
It's been 10 years. Wow.
Okay. All right. But yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. So I just finished the game, and yes, the ending is well, there really isn't an ending. It's you just get there's a closing screen. There's a closing closing screen at the title, and it's pretty much it. So
yeah.
And then it goes to then it goes to credits. And it's okay, great. So, but yeah, just playing the game is its own reward. So, but
yep.
Yeah, it's I also don't understand why this game has a point system, because by this point, I mean point systems are fine with platformer games, but it's a high score table, really? It's what's the point? So
right.
It just seems very again, European sensibilities, I guess. So anyway, so yeah, so I mean not a bad game to check out. It was interesting to play, just to see how it was and everything. So I mean said, if you like platformers like this, if if you're looking for a more unique platforming game, I definitely can recommend this. So I definitely can recommend checking it out. Otherwise, unless you're a huge fan of the movie, there's not really too much here, or you're a fan of European style platformers, because I know there are people who really love this. There are people who really love this style games. So
right.
Maybe so if you do like those, this one's also definitely worth checking out. But those those criteria aside, I really don't think they're missing too much. They're missing too much. I mean, the game's fine for what it is. I'm glad, I'm glad it came out. It's one of the few versions of the game that actually did come out. But yeah. So I mean, it's a decent. I mean, for what it is, like, it's a decent platformer game with some interesting ideas, but just kind of bogged down a little bit, I think, in execution of it. I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I recommend people at least play it once. But I mean, some people are going to connect with it, some people aren't. That's what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah. So apparently it's it's really unknown as to how far along that the CD versions of the game, the Saturn, Jaguar, 3DO, and PlayStation got. Some reports indicated that the game is being worked on for like 2 years. It was about like 90% complete. Looks like it was canceled. So
wow.
There probably will be a prototype found of that version of the game at some point, maybe.
Right.
Especially if it got like that far along. So, yeah. So that would have been interesting to see too. I mean, from the sound of it, it would have played more like the Virtual Boy version of the game as opposed to the 60-bit version of the game. But
yeah.
Yeah. So, the Game Boy version, like I said before, is similar to this, but it's also a little bit different gameplay. The stages are arranged a little bit differently. It actually looks like by cutting out some of the bloat. The Game Boy version of the game might be the best. So
yeah, I might have to check that out.
But and very impressive graphics also, like the system too. So, but having only got released in Europe, the reviews of this game back when it came out were pretty middling of the pack. It's like, it's like pretty much pretty much what we said. Not a great game, not a terrible game. Nobody really gave it very much notice. It's like, and it's kind of reflected. It's kind of reflected like in the rarity of this game as well, also, which we'll get here too, like in a moment. There are no cheat codes for this game, by the way. There are just the passwords available online. So you can skip around if you want to as well. So, how'd you? Oh, we should probably touch about this a little bit. Did you do any tweaks? Did you do any tweaks to this game to play the game in NTSC format as opposed to into PAL format, Joe?
No, I played it at the default. That's why I felt like it ran really slow, and I did not realize until you started talking about it that it's obviously in PAL mode, so that it would run a tad bit slower. So,
yeah, I think the game's a bit better in NTSC mode. To tweak it that way because it is faster. So I think that does help gameplay mechanics some. So, I think the NTSC. I think the North American version, had it come out, would have played better. So, but yeah, I mean, like, we're not going to rehash that debate here. So it's like, both formats have their pros and cons. So, it's interesting to see how DMA Design got their start with games like this and Lemmings and whatnot, eventually turned into Rockstar, which is a juggernaut today. So, it's always fun to go back to early games, companies company's library, say like, wow, okay, what's this? So,
right.
But it's games like this that they got paid to do this game, and it's games like this that gave them the money to work in games like this that gave them the money to work on stuff like GTA. So has its place.
Yep.
So anyway, so eBay, as I mentioned before, this game only got released in PAL. So and based upon what I found out there, the game A, did not sell very well, and B, many copies of the game were still available in new or even sealed format because of that. So, really interesting prices across the board when it comes to this game. So these prices are also going to be expensive, obviously, because all these people ship from Europe, and European shipping to North America is expensive.
Right.
So, I include shipping always, like the auction prices, because it's only fair. Keep in mind, shipping adds about $20 to $40, like the cost of this game to get to North America. So if you actually are in Europe, or if you have a friend who's willing to send you the game for much cheaper, then then you can get the game for cheaper. These prices are going to reflect you buying the game in North America on North America eBay to get shipped to get shipped to you from England or Germany or Italy, which the countries where I saw the game being sold from. So keep that in mind. So the game's out there, but like I said, not very common. There were 7 copies of the game currently listed on eBay when I checked yesterday. Only 3 copies of the game sold recently. So, so cart only. There were so the 3 copies. The 3 copies that I sold recently were all cart only. One's over $40. One's over $60. So we gotta keep in mind the high cost of shipping to North America. So, a more accurate price of the game itself because of that would be like $20 to $40.
Yeah, which isn't bad. I mean, I don't think I'd pay that, but
yeah,
considering it's a PAL only release,
right.
There probably weren't that many of them. I mean, that's a really good price. I mean, especially if you're a collector.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody, speaking about great price, somebody got a great deal because like the 3rd copy of the game sold in a lot of 5 for $60 total. So, if you're a collector, lots of the way to go. You can get like a lot of games for cheap.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
But they, and every now and then, like find uncommon games like this in lots too. So, maybe the seller didn't realize what they had. So, but anyway, so box copies. No copies of this game sold recently on eBay. So I base this pricing based upon what people are asking for and are bidding for right now on eBay for like listed copies. Box copies of the game looks like they're going to cost you anywhere from $105 to $240 based upon what I've seen on currently on eBay. So and I said before because I guess because the game didn't sell very well, there was actually two copies of the game available and sealed still. One person only asked for $200 for the copy of the game, so maybe that might go up by the time it ends. But the other one's being listed for $290. So probably the high 200s. We're looking for looking for a sealed copy of the game. So so if you're a completionist collector, this game will get expensive. But if you just want the card only, it's not that bad.
Yeah. I've definitely seen worse.
The Virtual Boy copy of this game is very expensive these days. So
yes.
So if your friend has the game, he's sitting on a gold mine.
Yeah.
So all versions of the game are pretty pricey. They're pricey these days, except the PC version because with few exceptions, PC versions never hold their value. So
right.
The only PC games that are expensive are rare limited release versions of the games that complete with boxes and everything. So
I was gonna say 90s big box games.
Yeah, they can command some good prices. So
yeah.
But beyond that, your basic PC cart, disc, tape, whatever is usually pretty cheap. So
yeah.
But I am curious to play I am curious to check out the PC version of the game, even though it didn't it didn't review very well because it sounds pretty fun.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Anyway, so that's Waterworld. Interesting game. I actually would dare say the movie's better than the game is.
Yeah.
That's going to be a controversial topic. But I would go out there on a limb and say that. So, I mean, not the game's terrible. I think the game's fine for what it is, but again, they could have tweaked it a bit better, I think. To have some quote unquote better gameplay. So,
right.
Do you have any final thoughts about the game itself, Joe?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, it's middle of the road. It does what it's supposed to do, and it seems like we both enjoyed it for what it was. But it doesn't sound like either one of us are going to go back to it anytime soon.
No. I mean, Yeah, yes, unfortunately, but yeah. So, all right, so that's that's gonna that's gonna wrap it up for this podcast. As always, we thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, comments, game suggestions, whatever, feel free to check us out on Facebook, or you can also send me an email directly to the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, how can they reach you?
You can reach me on Twitter at JoeSux30, and yeah, that's just go to Twitter. Twitter's easier.
And you gave your Twitter handle, right?
Yep, I did.
Okay, all right. So it is Joe's pick next time around.
Yeah.
So Joe, what interesting game, hopefully interesting, did you want us to look at next time?
Oh, it's going to be really interesting. So I didn't even know this existed. For one, I'm a big fan of Hudson Soft, so to find this game, I think we're going to have fun with it. It is called Do Re Mi Fantasy Milon's Quest, released only in Japan in March 22nd of 1996. So this is later in the Super NES / Famicom life. So this should be fun.
Right, yeah, I have heard of Milon before. I think maybe this is a sequel to like an earlier game.
That's what I'm thinking. So I played the original NES game of Milon's Quest, and I'm thinking this is a sequel. But it looks fun, and I look forward to checking this out.
Yeah, Hudson Soft had some like decent games. So but okay, all right. So, but well, another platformer, I guess. So like like two platformers in a row, but another like another like non-North American game. So obviously this one's been translated.
Yes, it's been translated, and I have the ROM if you need it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Shoot me a link over Discord after we're done here. So
yep.
So okay. Alrighty then. As always, we thank you very much for listening. This is the first podcast of 2021 that people are listening to. So 2020, the sooner it goes in the rear view mirror, the better. And best wishes for the best wishes that 2021's a better year for everybody. So stay safe, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. We'll catch you all next time.
Bye.
Take care.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Super power.